Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
Normally, being a little extra might be a bit much, but not when it comes to healthcare. That's why United Healthcare's Health Protector Guard fixed indemnity insurance plans, underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, supplement your primary plan so you manage out-of-pocket costs. Learn more at uh1.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Hey there, it's Michelle Norris. I'm host of a podcast called Your Mama's Kitchen. When I travel, I'm usually looking for a way to find a taste of home when I'm not at home. And one of the things I love to do when I am at home is entertain. And Airbnb allows me to do that. When I was in California recently, I rented a house that had a great kitchen. And when we were sitting around the table, we were all thinking, we're in someone else's house. Someone could be in all of our homes as well. If you have a home, but you're not always at home, you have an Airbnb. Your home might be worth more than you think. Find out how much at airbnb.com/host.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast and all my social media at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. So today I'm going to start by reading a review I got. Now, this was left on Apple Podcasts USA by DanCrow78. And it was a 5-star review, and it says, "Thank you. I love this podcast because of your bravery and sharing your story. You're sharing the experience firsthand from a hoarder's perspective, which I think means more than any of the other programs and podcasts are doing, since they only appear to have professionals on there that only give the side of the story from the outside looking in. You're using your platform to speak for those that don't feel they have a voice. Thank you for sharing your story. You've got many people rooting for you." Thank you. That is so nice. It feels like you get it. You get what I'm trying to do. A lot of people say that they really appreciate that I'm talking from the perspective of a hoarder rather than someone who works with hoarders. And yeah, you get it. And I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm also going to do my occasional series where I talk about my success of the week and my weird dilemma of the week. Talking about my success of the week helps to keep me accountable and motivated, and hopefully might motivate you a bit as well. And talking about the weird dilemma of the week is quite cathartic for me because a lot of these dilemmas are so weird, but because I'm not open about hoarding, I can't just go to my friends and say, you will never guess what I couldn't make a decision on. And it just gives listeners a bit of an insight into what goes on in our thought processes. So my success of the week is an unexpected one. I thought I was setting myself up to fail by doing this. At the end of last winter, so I guess spring, when it started to warm up, I had various blankets. I've got this plug-in blanket that warms up and it's just the best thing. And it was getting past blanket time of year. And I thought, you know what normal people do? They have a place that they put away their winter things and get out their spring things. Then at the start of winter, they put away the spring and summer things and they get out the winter things. And I thought if I was a normal person, I would have a place to put these blankets. And then in September, October, when I start getting cold, I will go, oh yeah, they are in that place and get them out. And this all sounds very sensible, but I am that person who buys Christmas cards in the January sales to put away till November and then never sees them again. This is a long, long history. I buy tickets for a concert 6 months in advance and then have no idea where they are by the end. 2 tips actually on that. First of all, electronic tickets, lifesaver. Secondly, if whatever you're going to is not set up with electronic tickets, then put a reminder in your calendar. Say you're buying the tickets in April, the gig is in December. When you put it in your calendar for December, put a note 2 days earlier saying the tickets for Friday are in the cutlery drawer, or the tickets for Friday are on that shelf by the books. And it is a lifesaver. So that's a bit of a diversion, but there we are. But yeah, so I wanted to put my winter things away somewhere I could safely find them again this winter, but I didn't have faith that that would work based on, years and years and years of life experience. But I thought, no, this is who I want to be. I want to be the kind of person who puts winter things away and then gets them out again coherently. And so some point in spring, I put the winter blankets, including the gorgeous plug-in one, away. And it's October now, so it's getting cold. I live in a country where the weather is entirely predictable while also being entirely unpredictable. And I suspect other Brits will relate to that. But, it's October, it's getting cold. And I was just a bit aware, I know where I think I put them, but what if I'm wrong? Or I know I put them away, but what if other stuff has gone on top of them and I can't find them? And I've had a bit of a low-lying anxiety over a couple of weeks about whether I'll ever find these blankets again. And success of the week, the blankets were exactly where I thought they were. It feels like such a victory, and it feels like adulting. This is something that grown-ups do. They put their winter stuff away and then find it again the next winter. And I did it. And you know what else I did? I had various desk fans and that kind of thing. We had an absolutely boiling summer and we don't have air conditioning here. So, I had a couple of fans, and in the spirit of optimism, I put away the fans where the blankets were, so that when it starts to get warm again, I can put the blankets back there and get the fans back out. Now that sounds like a functioning system. And I guess watch this space. In another 6 months, I will be able to assess whether that worked. But for now, my success of the week is that the blankets were where I thought they were going to be. My weird dilemma of the week. I've been doing quite well at getting clothes out to the charity shop. And I happened upon a pile of shoes while doing this. And I thought, right, I'm going to try every shoe in this pile on. And if they don't feel quite right, or if I don't love them, then they're going in the charity shop bag. I haven't worn most of them. It's ridiculous to keep them. I wear the same shoes all the time. I don't know why. I think I need multiple pairs. So I was trying on these shoes and I was doing pretty well at saying, yeah, they're a bit tight. They can go. Or I don't love that colour. They can go. And I kept, I think, 3 pairs. And that feels okay. That feels okay. But there was one shoe that I tried on and it was clearly too tight. And I thought, I'd held back on donating it earlier because I really like these shoes. But I was being quite ruthless and thought, no, they are too tight. I will never wear them because they would hurt if I had to walk any distance in them. So I was all set for those shoes to go in the charity shop bag when I realised that in the pile of shoes I'd been trying on, this pair only had one shoe and I could not find the other one. And it is somewhere. I haven't thrown it away and I haven't donated it because I know I haven't thrown it away because I knew I really wanted to keep them. And I know I haven't donated it because I wouldn't have donated one shoe without the other. So shoe number 2 is in the house somewhere. Shoe number 1 is all ready to go. And I'm not ruthless enough to say, well, I'll just throw it away because I can't hold on to one shoe until the other one appears. I'm not ruthless enough for that. It would feel too wasteful. I'm trying so hard to not get hung up on the whole wasteful thing, but that would be a step, no pun intended, too far. So my dilemma is what on earth to do, because, of course, I suspect most listeners will know what the dilemma is, and that is that by the time I find shoe number 2, I won't know where shoe number 1 is. And I'm stuck. And I keep thinking, well, I could just be really, really clear about where I put it and really, really make myself remember it. But there's a problem I have where, because there's a lot of stuff, sometimes I can put something somewhere and over time it just kind of shifts because something goes on top of it or I move something that's next to it and it falls and then it slips somewhere. And so even if I'm really careful about remembering where I put it, there is a decent chance that it won't be quite where I think it is when I do find shoe number 2. However, at this point, I feel like I need to make more effort to find shoe number 2. I guess throwing away shoe number 1 could be feasible if I really, really, really can't find shoe number 2, but I'm not there yet. I'm not ready for that yet. So that is my weird dilemma this week. What to do with shoe number 1 while I'm waiting to find shoe number 2. It is harder than I might have expected. So if you have any ideas, do get in touch and let me know. What should I do with shoe number 1? What do I do? Tell me what you think. All my contacts, social media, everything you can find at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. So I've been thinking a bit about minimalism and, I listen to a couple of minimalism podcasts. I follow a few minimalists on Twitter. I read the odd minimalism, that's quite hard to say, minimalism blog. And I find it a really strange experience because on the one hand, it is quite inspiring. I feel like they are at an extreme of which I'm at the other extreme. And I think utilizing some of the tactics that minimalists employ could be really helpful for a lot of people who hoard. But I also feel like I would really, really not like to live in a minimalist home. I look at pictures of minimalist homes and they make me feel kind of almost anxious. That emptiness, that blankness. It feels soulless and I don't know who that person is and I don't know. It is absolutely not my goal. So I've been thinking about how we can take what we find beneficial from minimalist philosophies and ideas and advice without feeling we have to go the whole hog, because that all or nothing thinking is quite dangerous and quite damaging for a lot of people. And I think people who hoard can really get quite all or nothing about things, but quite often more on the all end of things. And I think swapping hoarding for extreme minimalism is probably not super healthy. It's probably an improvement, but for me at least, I can't talk for you, but for me at least, that's not my goal. It's not desirable. But I've been thinking about why do I find those empty spaces so anxiety provoking? And why do I find them so devoid of personality. And so why do I associate stuff with soul and personality? And there's an interesting trend maybe called maximalism. And it is people who really fill their spaces, not in a hoarding way, in quite a creative, colourful, chaotic, but pretty way. So like they might have a wall in their home that is top to floor photo frames with different photos in. They might have all their crockery mismatched and a bit chaotic. And I like it as a look. I think it's got charm and it's got character. On Instagram, you can follow hashtags as well as people, and I follow the maximalism hashtag and get to see some quite interesting glimpses into people's homes. And I put a blog post up as well on overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk that I will link to in the show notes about whether Generation Z or Gen Z, as some people would say, are turning to maximalism as a kind of reaction against the minimalism of millennials and Gen Xers. And I think it's really interesting. And I also think that if I aim for maximalism, that wouldn't be far enough. I feel like I need to aim. I'm thinking of like a scale with minimalism on one end and hoarding on the other end. And maximalism is closer to hoarding, but is not hoarding. I need to be clear about that. These aren't people with a problem. These are people with an aesthetic that is a lot. And that some people would no doubt look at and think that is too much. I can't cope. That would stress me out. Whereas people like me look at it and think that is quite cute. I like how much personality there is. I like that it's colourful. So on my imaginary scale, you have minimalism at one end, and then in the centre is kind of just your standard home. And then somewhere between that and hoarding is maximalism. And so I think if I shot for maximalism, that wouldn't be far enough. I need to shoot further than that towards the middle normal home thing. And maybe I'll land at maximalism. Because, as I talked about last week, partial solutions and imperfect solutions are great. But it's really highlighted to me how much, to some degree, I associate identity and personality with the things people have around them. And so if I look at an empty home that's got a bed and a TV and 3 books, I have no idea who that person is. It doesn't feel like somewhere I would be comfortable. Like if you go to somebody's house, you can learn a lot from them by the books on their bookshelf, for instance, or by the music on, well, I guess these days it's not so much like their CD collection or their record collection, is it? So we can't so much have a nosy around somebody's Spotify. But I like there to be stuff. It's about balance and not having so much stuff that you can't live in it comfortably. And so I feel like if you want to aim for minimalism, that's all well and good. And, go for it. But if I somehow moved into a minimalist home, I would be filling it up. Not just because I'm a hoarder, but because I would need at least some things around me that had some character. I would need some colour. I would need some art on the walls. I would need some cosy things. And it's how to do that without needing to own every version of everything just in case. Just in case of what? Just in case of sometimes absolutely nothing. But this sense, this urgency, I have to have that or I have to keep that, is overwhelming. It can take over my thoughts. It can take over my mind. I feel like an addict sometimes, and it's just not healthy. I understand feast or famine better than I understand just regular day-to-day amounts. I had a period of my life when I had no income, and that was followed by a period of my life when I had a very small income. And that period of my life was awful. It was genuinely bleak and depressing And when you're in that kind of position, you can't think of anything else. You can't think of anything but how hungry you are or how short you are of things. And I was in a position where I genuinely, if I ran out of something, I couldn't replace it. Or if I broke something, I couldn't replace it. I had to hold on to everything because I might need it, and I was in no position to do anything other than to hold on what I originally had. It was bad, and although I was a messy person before that, I certainly was already having trouble getting rid of things and all, that kind of thing. That period of my life, I think, really instilled this urgency and the absolute need and the absolute fear of what if I need it. I think it really firmed that in my brain as an absolute catastrophe. If I don't have this and I need it or want it, then things are desperate. And I think it's like that feeling froze and stuck and is still there, even though I'm now in a position, I'm far from rich. But if I break a mug, I can buy another mug. If I run out of shampoo, I can buy more shampoo. But there's part of my brain that doesn't trust that to be the case. There's part of my brain that can't quite let go of that fear of what if I need it. Because I also think once you've been in that position, you are aware of how precarious life can be. And so there is a degree of, well, it happened to me once. What if I find myself in that position again? That sure, I could replace a broken mug now, but what if in 12 months' time things are very different and I can't, and then I threw that thing away and then I need it and I really, really can't replace it. So it's like my brain is stuck on, if I need this in the future and don't have it, it will be a disaster. And then even if I reassure myself, it then gets stuck on, yeah, you've been there once though. You could be there again. And it's been a long time since I was in that position where I had nothing. And I don't know how to reassure those parts of my brain more effectively, because living a different life hasn't done it. The fact that I've been able to replace things I break or lose or get rid of for quite some time now hasn't calmed down the fear associated with being in a position when I couldn't. And so maybe my anxiety when I look at empty spaces goes beyond, I don't feel like that has much personality. Maybe it goes to, if something goes wrong, this person has no options. Maybe my brain goes to, this is uncomfortable because they have nothing. And rather than I have nothing as a positive minimalist message, my brain interprets I have nothing in a very, very different way to that. Maybe there's some privilege in being able to be comfortable with minimalism. Maybe there is a certain type of person who can be minimalist because they have the ultimate faith and confidence that if something went wrong, they would still be fine, or indeed that nothing would go wrong in the first place. And maybe people who've not had lives that were that straightforward would struggle more with minimalism. I would be interested to see whether there's any kind of demographic looks at who tends to be a minimalist and who tends not to be. So maybe my need to fill up those empty spaces is mostly about still needing to reassure the me in my early 20s who was living in a flat I couldn't pay the rent on, with bills I couldn't pay, with awful food because it was all I could risk paying for, and trying to choose between whether I buy soap or whether I buy tampons. And so the more I fill places up, the more, if something goes wrong, there's likely to be a bar of soap in there somewhere. I can relax a bit. That bit of my brain that is stuck in the early 2000s can look around and say, okay, if you do run out of soap, there'll be more. And I need to soothe that more effectively, because clearly no amount of living in a different way has done that. No amount of being in a position where I can replace stuff has done that. But I don't know what the approach should be to reassure that bit of my brain that is still terrified of being surrounded by nothing, that is still terrified of what do I do if the light bulb blows? What do I do if, God forbid, something big like the fridge breaks? Just no options at all. I would buy the cheapest tin food and the cheapest bread, and that was it for far too long. And when I think of like the traumatic things I've been through in my life, I probably wouldn't even list that in the top 5 or the top 10. But I think partly because it was prolonged, I often think of traumatic events as things that happened as almost a one-off. So perhaps partly because it was prolonged, or perhaps because the other traumatic things I would list are perhaps more dramatic, or perhaps considered more typically traumatic. They're perhaps what people think of as trauma, whereas a prolonged period of poverty is traumatic. I think there's no doubt about that. It is absolutely traumatic, but it's not what people first think of when they say I've been through trauma, or, when they hear somebody say that. There's got to be a way to soothe 22-year-old me, or however old I was, that's still hanging around trying to protect me. I think that's the thing. It's not coming from a place of being destructive. It's coming from a place of trying to protect me and trying to keep me safe. But it's entirely counterproductive, and it's not what I need. And yet the panic sets in, and I go, no, keep hold of it, keep hold of it, keep hold of it, buy more, buy more, buy more. This is something I clearly need to work on. I intended to talk about whether we should aim for minimalism or not. And I guess I have the same conclusion as I said earlier. If that's what you want in your life, go for it. If it isn't, then take the tools you do have, read about minimalism if it interests you, and pick up the odd tip here and there that you think feels applicable. But don't feel you have to aim for minimalism. And probably a happy medium is nearly always better.
Say hello to a new era of mental health care. Cerebral is here to help you achieve your mental wellness goals with professional therapy and medication management support. 100% online. You'll experience the all-new Cerebral Way, an innovative approach to mental wellness designed around you. You'll get a personalized treatment plan from a therapist, prescriber, or both in a safe and judgment-free space. Your Cerebral therapist or prescriber will outline a customized plan with clear milestones along the way, so you can get to feeling your best. With Cerebral, you're not alone in your mental health journey. We're here to empower you to live a fulfilling life. So take that first step towards a brighter future and sign up today at Cerebral.com/podcast and use code ACAST to get 15% off your first month. Offer only valid on monthly plans. Other exclusions may apply. Offer ends July 31st, 2024. See site for details.
Normally, being a little extra might be a bit much, but not when it comes to healthcare. That's why United Healthcare's Health Protector Guard fixed indemnity insurance plans, underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, supplement your primary plan so you manage out-of-pocket costs. Learn more at UH1.com.
So, as some of you will know, I have been asking people to submit their hoarding secret. I'm very interested in how many of us keep this a secret, or are perhaps more open about the general situation but still have secrets that we keep away from other people. I think that the issue of shame around hoarding is huge, and I think it prevents us from getting help sometimes. And so I have set up a little form where if you want to, you can send me your hoarding secret. Now, the way it's set up means I've no idea who sends it. So if you do send something in, I don't know who you are. I couldn't find out if I wanted to, and I don't want to. It's as anonymous as I could manage. And people have sent some in. And I really appreciate that, because even though I don't know who you are and listeners don't know who you are, I do know that it's a very vulnerable thing for people to do. I get that. It's incredibly difficult. And especially knowing that they're sending them in to be read out on the podcast, I appreciate that must feel quite terrifying. I mean, I still find the fact that I talk quite openly on here quite terrifying. And I partly only do that because I'm anonymous. So I get it. And I'm so thankful and honoured that people are trusting me with their secrets. So this is the secret I'm going to read out today. I have cockroaches and rodents because of my hoarding. I keep chipping away at my hoard as a result of the infestation. But as soon as I find a dead cockroach or more rodent droppings, I get overwhelmed and need to stop for the day. I'm disgusted with myself that it got this bad, and some days it feels like I'll never climb out of this mess. So, firstly, thank you. Secondly, I know you're disgusted with yourself, but I'm not disgusted with you. I can absolutely see how this could happen. I suspect it's more common than a lot of people would admit. And also, people who aren't hoarders can get cockroaches and rodents and other infestations. I don't know how I've escaped it, to be honest, and I'm touching wood. I completely understand why it would feel humiliating and disgusting, but I also need you to know that you are not disgusting. This is the consequence of a whole series of things going wrong in your life that have led you to this place. And you're not a bad person. You're a person who's struggling, and that's a real difference. And of course, a vicious cycle develops, doesn't it? Where you're determined to fix things, and then you come across evidence of the infestation, and you panic and freeze and stop. And that then means you do less work on your home, and that can lead to the infestation worsening, which leads to a place where you're more likely to find evidence of the infestation and panic and freeze. And I can absolutely see how that cycle could happen. My entire life is a series of vicious cycles, and it's one of the hardest things to kind of try and interrupt that cycle somehow. I'm so glad you told me, and you're doing good. You're doing good. Keep going. That's all we can do, is keep going. And listeners, if you want to send in your secret, you can do so at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/secret. In just 1 second, I'll give you my top tip of the week. In the meantime, please do subscribe to the podcast, review it, 5 stars would be amazing, and share it with your friends or anyone who might be interested or who might benefit from it. It all really helps. To find more ways to support the website, the podcast, and my overall de-hoarding project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Now, back to your top tip. So my top tip this week is a clip from the Tim Ferriss show, and he was interviewing a guy called Leo Babauta, who is quite internet famous for his blog Zen Habits, which I've dipped in and out of over the years. I find it sometimes a bit more esoteric when I quite like practical solutions, but still very interesting. And Leo is a very interesting, thoughtful guy. And in this little clip, it's from a section where he's talking about the different techniques he used to stop smoking. And he's talking about, I guess, cravings, you'd call them. But when I listened, I could really relate, not just to the quitting smoking and having cravings, but it felt like, even though he's talking about physical cravings, it felt also like it related a lot to the strong urges we might get as hoarders that may make us want to buy something or may make us want to hold on to something. So even though he's talking about physical nicotine cravings, just have a listen to how he coped with that and see whether you think there's any way you could apply that same kind of strategy to other strong urges you might get relating to hoarding or acquiring.
I also learned to just recognize when I had the urge and then sit with that urge. So it was a form of meditation, is just sitting with the physical sensation of needing to smoke without needing to actually smoke. So I learned to separate the urge from the action. Before that, whenever the urge happened, I had to take action. It felt like a command, like there was no choice and there was no separation between them. But when I learned to separate the two, I learned that the urge is just a feeling in my body that I could sit with, and it would rise and get really strong and feel incredibly urgent, but then it would pass. And so learning that actually unlocked so much for me, because I learned that none of the urges that I thought I needed to act on were actually commands, but they were just feelings in the body. So that liberated me a lot.
Let me know what you think. I will link to the Tim Ferriss Show and Zen Habits in the show notes at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Okay, thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at @thathoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support, and do subscribe to this podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes.